Supervisors. Supervisors play a critical role in the success of every EMCOR company. Whether they are project managers, superintendents, foremen, general foremen, account managers, lead engineers, or something else, supervisors help ensure that we are safe and productive. A lot is expected of supervisors at EMCOR companies. They are responsible for productivity, quality, and the safety of the workforce. Supervisors provide daily contact with workers, and they are often our most frequent contact with customers. Their work is accomplished in the midst of seemingly endless meetings, conversations, questions, and challenges. When they are on site, supervisors spend time reviewing the progress of work by looking at installed material and serviced equipment. By looking only at completed work, supervisors are looking backwards to measure productivity and catch errors. It's not surprising that many supervisors find it difficult to carry out their most important and valuable role, to supervise, educate, and develop the workforce to be productive going forward and to prevent errors and injuries. By changing their point of view to look forward at the workforce rather than back at the work, supervisors at EMCOR companies will be better able to take action that will reduce the risk of injury, prevent installation problems, and improve productivity. Successful supervisors are experienced, knowledgeable, organized, and have a good rapport with the workforce. But our best supervisors have also developed the ability to identify opportunities to improve. They know what to look for. Over the next few minutes, we will follow the story of Joe, a supervisor who develops the vision to see opportunities to reduce risks and improve safety on his projects, while also improving the performance of his crew and the financial performance of the job. Like most supervisors, Joe is busy. There's so many distractions and so much to do. Just putting down the phone and getting out into the field to see what's been done can be difficult. For him, reviewing progress has always meant looking at finished work. In the process, he's overlooking the biggest factors to his success, the people and the workflow that make it possible. When it comes to safety, Joe spends a lot of time in safety meetings. He checks to make sure everyone is doing their pre-task planning and is constantly on the lookout for people not wearing gloves, protective eyewear, fall protection, and other appropriate personal protective equipment. PPE usage isn't a problem like it used to be, but even though crews are better, we still have injuries. What more can Joe do? Joe walks the job. He sees the work. He talks to the customer, but he knows that the job is beginning to fall behind schedule. On top of that, he's concerned about the potential for injury. No one's been hurt yet, but Joe knows there have been a few near misses and first aid cases, any one of which could easily have been worse. The project manager says they're going to miss some important milestones. He wants to know what Joe can do differently. There's so much activity on the site. How is it possible that they're not making the numbers? Where are the crews spending all that time? Joe can't add more people. That might just make the situation worse. Before going out on site to get to the bottom of it, Joe is reminded, activity is not the same thing as productivity. Before he can even get through a staging area, Joe literally stumbles over a problem that he has to fix. Material is all over the floor, and he can't move forward until it's cleaned up. If it had been in a cage with wheels, then he wouldn't have to clean it up. Joe's frustrated because he shouldn't have to waste his skills, time, and resources doing a task that could have been prevented. Better material handling has to be part of the solution. Where else are we wasting our effort or setting our people up for failure? This experience leads Joe to see that there's a lot of unnecessary motion and material handling on site. Do you see some of these challenges on your projects? After watching some members of his crew work, Joe finds that too many people are poorly positioned for their task. They have to stretch and reach to get the work done, and work by touch because it is sometimes difficult to see. Sometimes the lift is poorly positioned, or the ladder is too short for the work. In some cases, people work on the ground because there's no work surface set up. This slows production and unnecessarily exposes the crew to potential injury with or without PPE. By repositioning the lift, making a better ladder selection, and getting off the ground, each person is able to work faster and safer. He's also found that when workers on a ladder or lift don't have a tool belt or pouch, they have to go up and down many times to retrieve and handle material. If Joe simply directs his people to use tool belts, he reduces material handling and time spent going up and down ladders. After his experience tripping over material, Joe realizes that although he's used to seeing people walking around carrying tools and materials, it's not productive and indicates the need for better planning. Joe sees the material and tools should be staged on carts or other equipment with wheels, which makes them easy and quick to move and keeps them off the ground. If Joe shows his people that the use of carts and racks for larger material will mean less walking, less manual handling of materials, and better staging, he will reduce wasted time, fatigue, and the risk of injury on the job. And his workers will find the job less physically demanding and easier to do well. Joe also observes that sometimes people have difficulty finding what they needed to do the job because the staging area is not well organized. If Joe insists that the crews have organized gang boxes and staging areas and instructs the crews to use them and keep them that way, time spent treasure hunting will be reduced and time spent installing will increase. By educating his crews to improve worker positioning and ladder selection, and about keeping material and tools mobile to reduce manual material handling and walking, Joe will develop his workforce, prevent injuries, and make a big difference on the productivity of the project. Joe goes on to find that although basic PPE is widely used, personal productivity equipment is often overlooked or not provided. What is personal productivity equipment? It is PPE that is used to make individuals more productive by making the job easier and more comfortable to do. For example, it can be difficult to get the job done without error when working in dark areas. Joe finds that when headlamps are used, the work is installed faster with fewer mistakes. Likewise, when knee pads are used, Joe finds that his people finish sooner, are less fatigued, and their knees don't hurt. As we've already seen, a tool belt or tool pouch can also be considered personal productivity equipment because it reduces the number or trips up and down a ladder and walking through a job site. Going forward, Joe will view headlamps, knee pads, and other personal productivity equipment as just as essential as gloves, hard hats, fall protection, and other traditional PPE. What's more, he'll educate his people to have the same expectations. If he finds someone working without the right gear, he'll stop him or her and correct the situation just as he would if they were not wearing their safety glasses. Joe also observes times when individuals could be using better tools, techniques, and technology to reduce fatigue and risk of injury. Although cordless power tools are much more common on projects today, sometimes they're still not used. Watching his workers, Joe finds that some aren't using power tools out of habit or because they don't know that better tools are available. In some cases, Joe can tell that he needs to get more of the right tools into the hands of his people. Joe can also see that tool attachments and accessories should be used to access hard-to-reach areas or to take care of specialized tasks. What difference can using the right tools for the job make? See how much time and effort is saved by using a porta-band to cut material rather than doing it by hand. By putting the right tools into the hands of the installers, Joe is increasing productivity, reducing fatigue, and reducing the risk of many kinds of injuries. The introduction of new technologies should also change how EMCOR companies work. 3D modeling of projects should not just change the way we bid and manage work, it should also change the way we build and supervise. For example, layout work can be time-consuming and subject to costly errors. Using technology to lay out a job will increase speed, accuracy, and reduce fatigue and the risk of injury. By making sure that every worker has the right tools and that they're using the right techniques, and by promoting the use of technology, Joe is improving labor productivity on his job. developing worker habits and expectations, preventing errors, and reducing fatigue and the risk of injury. When Joe watches the tools and techniques used on his jobs, one technique stands out as particularly valuable: prefabrication. As a general rule, prefabrication and assembly of materials to be installed is at least 3 times more efficient than assembly at the installation point. Joe has always believed that prefab works well for big assemblies that could be moved into place. However, Joe can see that it also works well for small stuff, like hangers, boxes, small plumbing assemblies, etc. Prefabricating includes simple preparations like pre-bending conduit, pre-threading pipe, or pre-cutting threaded rod, or unistrut to length and adding a clip or fastener. Joe finds that the time savings from prefabricating and assembling a simple trapeze hanger is significant. But how should he decide when to try to prefabricate something? Here are a few tips. 1. Frequency. Are there a lot of them? 2. Uniformity. Is it the same or nearly the same every time? 3. Quality. Does it have to be perfect each time? 4. Mobility. Can it be moved, or can a means to move it be created? 5. Modularity. Can large component pieces be prefabricated with only final assembly on site? 6. Mechanization. Can any part of the process be mechanized? After looking for prefab and pre-assembly opportunities and using this criterion, Joe finds that he can easily identify new opportunities to increase quality, reduce fatigue, and improve productivity and prefabrication. One last thing that Joe sees while observing his site is rework being done. Rework is anything that has to be done over again because it wasn't done right the first time. It can be easy for supervisors like Joe to overlook the impact of rework on productivity and risk because we're not always the cause of rework and because much of it's small. On top of that, few workers will report rework as such, keeping it hidden from view. However, reducing rework is one of the most important things that a supervisor can do because supervisors are often in the best position to see its impact on a large scale. But in order to find it, Joe has to look for it. For example, Joe finds some workers that are moving some boxes 2 inches after they were installed. In another case, he observes a worker rerouting some conduit. If Joe doesn't look for it or record it when he finds it, this extra work will go unnoticed and its causes will remain unchanged. In each case, Joe sees that the rework just took a few people a few minutes, but this rework exposes them to unexpected risks and lost productivity. To better identify the causes of rework, Joe encourages his crew to report it whenever it happens. He investigates it vigorously to find out why it happens and records his findings in his daily log to help figure out if there are any common causes. By encouraging reporting and identifying common causes, Joe is able to take action to reduce time spent on rework and develop his crew to prevent problems rather than fix them. In the past, Joe looked at completed work, but now he's changed his view to observe the process and workers. There are 5 key areas where Joe was able to improve productivity and safety. 1. Reducing motion and material handling. 2. Use of personal productivity equipment. 3. Improving use of tools, techniques, and technology. 4. Identifying and increasing prefabrication. And 5. Recording and reducing rework. In taking a closer look at how the work is executed, Joe makes another important discovery. The time he spends working with his people, training, educating, and guiding them has improved morale and helps crew members to also identify risks and opportunities. Now they tell him about things they observe and improve safety and productivity. After making some changes, the productivity has improved on the project and there have been fewer near misses and minor reports. Rework is being reduced and the customer is pleased with the progress. Management is happier and the crews seem a lot happier. Finally, Joe has found the work more enjoyable and in the process become a better supervisor.